What's going on, you guys, and welcome to part 3 of Spider-Man month. Yep, you saw that title right. I'm bringing back Norty Defends for one final review. I did quite a few of these, but a couple of years ago I did a few that I just wasn't proud of, and so I pretty much gave up on it. However, I decided to do one more for old time's sake. I assume most of you know who ChrisStuckmann is, and if you don't, I'm not sure what rock you've been living under. I've been a fan of his since his quick movie review days back on his old channel. He's very analytical in his review style and clearly loves the art of filmmaking, but he also has a good sense of humor. Granted, he can be a little nostalgia blind. I mean, you could make a drinking game out of how many times he says, "I grew up with," or "they don't make movies like this anymore." And before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that this is not me attacking Chris in any way. It's meant to be fun, guys. Relax. Also, for those who don't know, I skip over parts that I either agree with, are positive, or are such small little nitpicks that they aren't even worth commenting on. So, let's dive in, shall we?
So we get a weird Bourne Identity ripoff fight scene in a plane taking place in the past where they had current modern day Sony Vaio laptops that didn't exist when this scene took place.
I was more surprised that he was able to upload this video on a crashing plane, but that's just me.
So let's talk about Paul Giamatti.
Oh god, I think he had a stroke. Chris, are you okay?
Wow.
Oh, thank God.
Jamie Foxx is also in this film, and he plays Electro. I don't mind him so much. You do feel some sympathy for him, but he's essentially the Riddler from Batman Forever. He obsesses over Spider-Man just like Jim Carrey obsessed over Batman. He has this strange office with pictures of Spider-Man everywhere. He talks to himself.
Well, the Riddler was the best part of that movie, so if you take the best part from a mediocre movie, it's probably going to be, at worst, just a mediocre part of this movie.
It is almost like Joel Schumacher made this movie. It's actually scary.
As soon as we see a spider credit card or spider nipples, then I'll agree with you on that.
So the Rhino's going around causing all this destruction, and Spider-Man decides to hang around and tell some jokes instead of just stopping him. Look at what happens next. All of this destruction and chaos and possible life loss that he could have just stopped if he wouldn't have told those quips that the fans wanted to hear so much that the screenwriters just were like, hey, we have to please the fans. Who cares about making a coherent film and portraying Spider-Man as a hero that saves lives? He wants to tell some jokes while causing a shit ton of destruction in his path along the way. This entire opening sequence is edited so poorly. It goes from Gwen giving this speech, she's the valedictorian, back to Rhino, back to Jamie Foxx, back to Spider-Man, and it's all of these clashing tones, and you realize that really the entire film is actually going to be like that.
Now, I do agree with the tonal shifts and Spider-Man causing some damage because of his one-liners. Although, to be fair, at least he didn't let the entire city get destroyed when he could have easily led Rhino out of the city. But I do disagree with him about the editing. Personally, I thought it was great. It was quick, it got me really pumped up, the music was exciting, and it reintroduces you to all the characters so the movie can start properly. I will admit the opening is the worst part of this movie. It is very clumsy, but I personally don't think it's that bad.
And again, Gwen has no real reason to be here. She's just Gwen Stacy. What is her character? She doesn't have a character. She doesn't do anything. She's just Gwen Stacy. She's off and on with Peter. Peter's off and on with her. She's happy. She's sad. She goes from all of these highs and lows emotionally throughout the script and Emma Stone's performance to where all of a sudden at the end she's just like, hey, this is my life. This is my decision. And I'm going to help you with the Green Goblin problem. And you can't do anything about it.
Now this one I completely disagree with. The thing I like about Gwen is that she's more than just a blank slate in order to get Peter a girlfriend, like Mary Jane. She's smart, but also sarcastic. She's brave, but can often get in over her head. She's funny, and she's willing to help Peter out at any point she can because, Well, she loves him. Also, she's got a lot on her plate right now. She has to decide between following her dreams and going to London or staying with the guy she loves. And what do you mean she's useless? She's the reason Peter learns about Max. She tells Peter to magnetize his web shooter so he can defeat Electro. And if she wasn't there at the end, then no one would have been able to restart the power in time and many people would have died. I really want to stay away from the earlier movies, but what did Mary Jane do again? I rest my case.
I gotta say though, my favorite part of this film is this one little tiny scene where this kid's getting picked on and Spidey rescues him and fixes his little windmill that he made and just walks off with him. That's Spider-Man. That is Spider-Man. That scene is Spider-Man. They absolutely nailed that character, but it doesn't actually have much impact on the film, except later the kid comes back and stands in front of the Rhino in the Spider-Man costume.
This scene actually ties into the theme that Spider-Man gives people hope. Spidey gave the boy hope that he would one day become a brilliant scientist, and gave him the courage to stand up to the bullies. Granted, maybe standing up to a guy in a robot suit is a bit much, but it's a thought that counts.
Dane DeHaan, who I normally love, plays Harry Osborn in this film terribly. It's a lot of slow, methodical talking. My father's dead. He died from a disease that I now have. And this disease is going to kill me very soon, Peter.
Personally, I didn't see much of a difference between his performance here and his performance in Chronicle. I mean, they're basically the same character.
This whole subplot with Harry Osborn with this disease. Norman Osborn has the same disease. It's passed on through hereditary genes. But for whatever reason, it took Norman Osborn a really long time to die. But Harry has, like, I don't know, like no time. He's dying, like right now. It makes no sense. It's just this terrible plot device to get Harry to want Spider-Man's blood to put inside of him to maybe combat against this disease.
It's more there to give Harry a character arc. He's dying, he wants Spider-Man's blood to hopefully keep him alive, but Spider-Man won't give it to him because it may make him go crazy, and this is what causes him to resent Spider-Man.
Because Peter's been infected with something along those lines, because some kind of experiments with his dad, because Oscorp, and there's a secret underground train that rises out from the subway when Peter finds the coins inside the calculator, and then inside the train there's a computer message that his father planned all of these years to just have underground, and he found the coins and it somehow worked. Who wrote this?
Well, if you condense a large patch of film into one paragraph, of course it's gonna sound stupid. So there's this kid who's friends with, like, this old man who built a time machine out of a DeLorean, and the kid goes back in time and stops his parents from meeting, and thus him and his siblings are fading from existence, but since he's the youngest, he's going last, and so he has to get his parents back together, and to do this he tries to toughen up his dad to ask out his mom, but there's a bully, so the kid makes him crash into a manure truck through this chase, but then his mom falls in love with him, and so he has to take her to a dance and try and rape her so his dad can save her so they can get back together. Who wrote this?
Sony had to have gotten their nasty little hands in there and said, this is what we want.
Well, yeah, that's not really a secret. Even I, who loves the movie, will admit, yeah, Sony obviously did meddle in this a little bit. Or probably a lot bit. But in this day and age, if you don't have a little bit of executive meddling in your big blockbusters, then that is a miracle.
The majority of this film is Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy walking around.
That's a bit of a hyperbole. The majority of the movie is just these two walking around. I think even people who have seen this movie and hate it would know that's bullshit. The scenes where they're walking around and talking to each other is there to establish their characters and their connection to each other. If you think they did it poorly, fine, you could at least make an argument there, but that's what the scenes were supposed to do.
Doing improvisational humor, maybe sort of making faces and scratching their noses and going,
Yeah, it's amazing how stupid something can look when you take it out of context.
That laugh. That's off the table.
My laugh is off the table?
You got to figure out a more annoying laugh.
Also, yes, there is a lot of improvisation in this movie, so they can have better chemistry. If you dislike it, fine, but personally I thought it was adorable.
And then there'll be big bloated action scenes with tons of CGI and Hans Zimmer's very bad idea of a dubstep theme. I really don't know what happened there.
Oh my god, an electronic villain has an electronic score? Oh my god, how could they have possibly thought that would be a good idea?
But my favorite part of the entire scene where Electro attacks Times Square with electricity flying everywhere is the fact that throughout this entire scene, Gwen Stacy is grabbing a metal bar. She's just such a smart character. She has to be there. This is her life, Peter.
She's pretty far away and in the front of a large crowd. She's probably being pushed into it, and if she didn't have her hands on there, she might be pushed over it. That's to keep her balance, Chris.
The other thing about The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is that it constantly tries to set up the Sinister Six. There are so many references to it.
Name one thing about the Sinister Six besides the rhino and the stuff at the end. I'm not saying there's not, but if you say they littered the film, back it up with at least one example.
And it's sad rewatching it now knowing that that's not going to happen because it just feels like a giant set-up trailer movie that doesn't have a story of its own and just exists to bring these villains together and hopefully make more. But they did such a shitty job making this film interesting that no one wants more.
I wanted more.
And did I mention that Electro plays a song? He plays the Itsy Bitsy Spider song with electricity.
Okay, I found that funny, but I can understand some people not. And just a little thing off topic, stop doing that! That looking off to the side thing in contempt you do. Even in reviews I agree with, it annoys the shit out of me.
So like I said earlier, Gwen dies because she just had to show up to the big showdown with lightning monsters and genetically altered spider people.
She needed to be there to turn the power back on. And Electro didn't kill her. She survived Electro. She didn't know about New Goblin. So technically, yeah, she was right to go to the power plant.
It'd be like me just walking into a war zone because it's my choice to be there.
It's not like she just went up and punched Electro. I mean, if she did, yeah, I would agree with you. She ran into him with a car and then kept her distance. Again, trying to turn on the power.
This is what these two Amazing Spider-Man films have done. The first one was like, hey, look, we have to appeal to all the people who didn't like Raimi's. All the haters of Raimi's films, we have to appeal to them. So he has to tell more jokes, he has to have web shooters, and he has to be like super smart and create all kinds of stuff, even though he has no money.
Yeah, different series, different tones. But it's not because of the tone, jokes, and web shooters that I like these movies more than Spider-Man 1 and 3. I liked them more because I thought they were better acted, directed, and the two leads were a lot more interesting. But even with that said, Spider-Man 2 I still think is the best, so it's not really a matter of tone, it's more how well the movie is made.
It's just they're trying to do whatever's different from the first Raimi films, and I understand why they would feel that way. They want to appeal to the haters of those films, even though those have seriously diminished over the years because of how shitty these two films were.
I think even if I hated these two films, I still wouldn't like Spider-Man 3.
The simple fact is, though, they don't tell a cohesive story. It doesn't make sense. They're just trying to appeal to a demographic.
Okay, I'll admit they have a lot going on, but I think saying they make no sense is a little strong. I can't really argue that other than say I follow them just fine.
They're just trying to appease certain people. They're not trying to make a great film. That's it.
So, nobody in the making of these films was like, alright guys, let's make these the best possible movies we can. Nope, apparently the director, writers, actors, and everyone else didn't care. That's actually kind of insulting.
This movie was a clusterfuck, man. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is really bad. The only thing that saves it is a couple scenes with Spider-Man.
Did you even mention the direction? I mean, you mentioned the CG a couple of times, but you never said if it was good or bad.
Really, I have no idea what they were thinking.
I think the people making the movie were trying to make an entertaining superhero sequel. Well, yes, the producers in studio were like, let's try and squeeze as many sequels and spin-offs as we can. Thanks, Sony! You know, as sad as I am that we aren't getting a follow-up to this film, if they're gonna act like that, you know what? They don't fucking deserve Spider-Man.
I'm gonna give this film a D.
And I'm just gonna leave some posters up of some movies he gave a better grade than this film.
Those are my thoughts on the Spider-Man films. I loved Spider-Man and Civil War. I think they really nailed the character. I can't wait for Homecoming.
Well, at least that's one thing we can agree on. So that was ChrisStuckmann's review of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it was pretty awful. Opinions are opinions, but about a quarter of the points he makes are just nitpicks, and I'm not misusing that words. They're fucking nitpicks.
That's why when they show this guy who has a YouTube video, he has 2 subscribers, 257,000 views, and 92 likes. Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Which I wouldn't mind so much if this review didn't reek of bitterness, pretension, and just contempt for anyone who disagrees with him. Now, if you think the movie sucks, fine. After this, I'll keep it as far away from you as possible, as long as you don't try and convince me that Spider-Man 1 and 3 are better. And if you think I missed anything, check out Patrick Ward's 2-part review. I'll leave a link in the description. It goes into a lot more detail. Guys, thank you so much for watching. We're gonna have something a little different next week for the finale of Spider-Man month. And if you like this, then you can click right here and get Norty-ized. Oh, that sounds stupid.